Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today we're gonna do my November wrap up. So I have kind of dropped the ball on this wrap up. So this video may not go up until halfway through December, but it's gonna go up, I promise. November was a busy month with Thanksgiving, Black Friday, as I'm sure it was for everybody, but December is an exceptionally busy month for me between work and all of the end of the year things that come along with that, and then helping my dance studio get ready for Nutcracker, the dance studio where I teach. And so just all kinds of things going on in December. Plus, with the days getting shorter, it's harder and harder to find time to film. But we are here, we are gonna do this wrap up and we're gonna get it out for you guys so that you can hear about all of the books that I read in November, the good and the bad. So we're gonna start on a high note. I was gonna start with my lowest rated books, but why start off on a bad note? Let's start off with a bang and then we'll finish off with the books that I wouldn't recommend. So I did have one reread this month, and it's also my only 5-star of the month, and that is Columbine by Dave Cullen. So this is a true crime, almost, I don't want to say retelling because I mean he did retell it, but it basically follows the Columbine High School shooting of April 20th, 1999 from start to finish. Everything from talking about the victims' lives to talking about theories to talking about how this crime impacted school shootings across our country in the years since. And this is such a well-written book. I don't feel like it gave fame to the shooters at all. I feel like it did a great job of highlighting the victims and remembering the victims. And with a crime like this, sometimes it's easy to hear a lot of conspiracy theories and kind of lose some of the facts. So this was a reread for me. It's still a 5-star. I highly recommend everybody read this. It's very informative and it's just a very well done, very respectful book. Moving on to the 4-star books that I read this month. I have another nonfiction book, and that is Why Has Nobody Told Me This Before by Dr. Julie Smith. So this is Everyday Tools for Life's Up and Downs. So Dr. Julie Smith kind of went viral on TikTok and just social media in general during the pandemic, doing little daily vignettes of how to take care of your mental health. And I started following her on social media, and then when I found out she wrote a book, I instantly had to pick it up. And it really is good practical life application for a lot of the things that you might hear in therapy, or really just some life skills that maybe you weren't taught as a child, because mental health was viewed very differently when I was growing up versus the way it is now. And so I feel like this is a very good companion to somebody who wants to just take a couple of minutes out of every day and just learn a new skill to kind of hone in on their own mental health. So I just read a couple pages of this every day. It's short chapters. There's a lot of good charts and diagrams that kind of help, great examples. It could even be used kind of as a workbook if you wanted to. There's a lot of open-ended questions, discussion questions, journal questions, etc. So highly recommend this one, and I rated it 4 stars. My next 4-star book is a little bit of a shock to me and probably to some of you, and it's a romance, and it's Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. And I read this because some of my friends here on BookTube, like Jesse and Gwen, have read this and really enjoyed it. And so I kind of picked it up on a whim during Thanksgiving week when I was cleaning my house, and I ended up listening to this whole thing in one day. This is about Alexis, and she is a doctor, and she comes from a pretty wealthy family, and her car breaks down in this small little town, and she ends up meeting somebody who helps her fix her car and get herself back on the road. And it just kind of goes from there. The guy that she meets, Grant, ends up actually being the mayor of the little town, and he owns a bed and breakfast and things like that. And so they kind of get this friends with benefits thing going on that we all know how that works, right? So it is a friends with benefits to lovers trope, which I really like that in my romance books. And Grant has a little baby goat that he takes care of, which is adorable. And it almost reminded me of an episode of Grey's Anatomy, just without all of the drama and angst, if that makes sense. I really appreciated the character of Alexis, and I felt like she had a lot of growth throughout this story. So yeah, this had a lot more to it than just a fluffy romance, which I is what I want, honestly. I don't just want a fluffy romance. I want a little bit of girth to my romance stories. So I highly recommend this one because I gave it 4 stars, which is shocking to me. The next book I gave 4 stars to is Notes on an Execution, and this one is about a man on death row, and you're hearing a little bit of his perspective, but you're also getting a couple of different perspectives, some of which are from his victims and some are from his victims' families. And I went into this thinking it was a thriller, but it really isn't. It really is more of a character study and almost like a slice of life of this man, kind of looking back on his life. And you definitely feel a bit of empathy for him because of the way he was raised. Not that that excuses what he did, but it definitely gave some insight into why he was the way he was, and just some of the deep, dark, traumatic things that happened to him in his life that I'm sure led him to not make great decisions and things like that. So while I don't condone what he did, I do see how his trauma really caused him to do unthinkable things because he felt like he had nobody that loved him. He felt like he had nobody. There was nobody to protect him. And his trauma led him to do really horrible things to women. And I really liked the emotions behind this book. I really liked the deep dive into the psyche of a serial killer. So I feel like I'm not doing this book justice, but it really is a good one. It's a nice slow burn. And so if you like true crime, I think you would like this. Even though this is fiction, it did remind me of a true crime novel. And the last book I gave 4 stars to this month was The It Girl by Ruth Ware. And this one is maybe even a 4.5. There's something holding me back from making it a 5-star, but I really did enjoy this one. And I was a little bit worried going into it because it's pretty thick and I hadn't heard great things about it. And this is about a woman who is pregnant and trying to move on with her life while being haunted by the memories of her college roommate being murdered in their dorm room. And a man was convicted of the murder, but now some things are coming to light that are maybe hinting at the fact that there might be more to it than what originally met the eye. And so our main character, Hannah, really wants to get to the bottom of it and figure out, did we convict the right man or did I testify against an innocent man? And this had really great dark academia vibes. I loved the collegiate vibes, and it was a little bit like nostalgic, made me think of my college days. And I just really enjoyed everything about this. I felt like it kept moving really well. I never felt like I was bored or like I was wanting the story to pick up a little bit more. And I just really enjoyed it. But there's something about me that just says this isn't a 5-star, but it's pretty close. All right, now let's talk about my 3-star books. And the first one I'm gonna talk about is Mad Honey by Jodi Picoult and Jennifer Boylan. And I read this as a buddy read with my friend Jessie from the channel Reading with Jess. We did a reading vlog on it. I will link that. I'll also link a Jodi Picoult ranking video that I have if you're interested on more of my thoughts about Jodi Picoult and her books. But basically this book is about a beekeeper, and she is a single mom with a teenage son who is convicted of the murder of his girlfriend. And that's pretty much all that you know based on the synopsis. And then as the story keeps going, it's written in 2 different point of views, the beekeeper mother's point of view and then the girlfriend's point of view before she died. And so many different things happen, and this book takes a lot of different turns and brings up a lot of really interesting and really important discussions. And I had no idea that that's what the book was going to be about and that's what the book was going to do. But in true Jodi Picoult fashion, we had a moral dilemma, we had a great court case, and some great legal scenes. And I think that part of the reason I gave this 3 stars is because I love Jodi Picoult's writing, but I definitely saw a difference in the chapters that Jennifer Boylan wrote. I could tell immediately what sections were written by Jenny Boylan and which sections were written by Jodi, just because I am very familiar with Jodi's style. That is one of the main reasons I gave it 3 stars, but I also felt like the ending was a little bit too rushed. I had to go back and listen to it again because I was confused. I was like, wait, that's the ending? Wait. I'm confused on what happened, and I had to go back and listen to it again. So that's why I gave that one 3 stars. The next book I gave 3 stars to is It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover. I know, I read 2 romances in 1 month. Who am I? But this is the sequel to It Ends With Us. It Starts With Us. It's the sequel to It Ends With Us. That always confuses me. And I read that a couple months ago in a reading vlog where I read some of my friend Gwen's favorite books. And so I wanted to read this one. And don't come for me in the comments. This is an unpopular opinion, but I liked this one better. It Ends With Us, I gave 3 stars. This I'm gonna give 3.5. I liked it better. I felt like it wasn't as formulaic as most romances typically are. Obviously, you know what it's about because the fans asked for it. So we know what the end result is going to be. So there are no surprises. And I felt like this was so much more realistic than a lot of Colleen Hoover's other books tend to be. I felt like this was realistic and wholesome. I felt like it was the ending that everybody needed. And yeah, but I mean, still cringy, still some of those, you know, smutty scenes are cringy. And I still don't like any of the characters and don't think they have a whole lot of development, but overall, I liked this book better than It Ends With Us. I have 3 more books that I gave 3 stars to, and all 3 of them are thrillers, starting with Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. This one I attempted to read twice and put it down and then picked it back up, and it finally stuck the 3rd time, but I never felt like, oh, I want to keep reading that book. I want to go back to it. It was just kind of like, okay, let me finish Daisy Darker now. So Daisy Darker and her family go to their Nana's house for her birthday, and she reads them her will, and then she dies mysteriously in the house. And they can't get away from the house because of the tide being too far in. They can't get away. So it's very much an and then there were none type of retelling. And then everybody else starts dying. And pretty much exactly what you think is gonna happen in this book happens. Even the twist, I was like, yeah, okay. Based on what I know of Alice Feeney and her twists, I was like, yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I don't know, the twist didn't work for me. The characters didn't work for me. I don't know. I felt like this was fun kind of while I was reading it, but not a whole lot memorable about this. And Alice Feeney, I just don't think is an author for me. Next, we have The Shadows We Hide by Alan Eskins, and I picked this up at a used bookstore, I think when I was on a work trip, because I loved the cover. I'd never heard of this author or this story before. Apparently this is a series, I don't know. I probably won't continue in it, but this is about a man who has custody of his brother who has disabilities, and he has a girlfriend that is going through law school, and so he's kind of trying to maneuver all of that, and he learns that his father, who he's never met or had any relationship with, died mysteriously. So he goes back to this town where his estranged father was, and he just is trying to figure out what happened truly. And it was nice. It was a fun, quick, easy read. I think I read this while I was on sprints with my friend Jessie, and I felt like it was a good kind of palate cleansing thriller. And I enjoyed the relationship between the main character and his brother. I liked to see how the different relationships kind of went together and flourished throughout this book. And so if you like a pretty straight, nothing gory, this isn't a cozy mystery by any means, but this is what I think of as a cozy mystery. You know, nothing gross, nothing horrific, just a pretty straightforward mystery that you're, you know, trying to figure out who done it, what happened. And I would recommend it if that sounds like something that you like in thrillers. And the last book I gave 3 stars to is The Villa by Rachel Hawkins. And I did get an advanced copy of this on my Kindle from NetGalley. So thank you so much to NetGalley for gifting me this copy to review. And unfortunately, I may not read any more Rachel Hawkins books. I say that now. Who knows in the future, but I've given one of her books 4 stars and then one of them 1 star. One of her books, her last book, Reckless Girls, is, spoiler, probably gonna be on my list of worst books of the year. And this one was just average. It's about a woman who writes cozy mysteries and her best friend who writes self-help books, and they decide to go on a reading retreat. So they go to this villa in Italy, and it turns out that it's haunted. And so you have their perspective, and then you also go back in time to the big incident that happened that led this villa to be haunted, supposedly. Follows like a band in the 70s. And I don't like music in my books. Like Daisy Jones and the Six sounds like something I would never enjoy. Even though everybody loves it, I really don't think I would enjoy it. So I didn't like that timeline. The main characters were just ridiculous. The things they said were ridiculous. I just kept rolling my eyes the whole time. It was a quick read, but pretty forgettable. And I say 3 stars, but honestly, it's kind of more like 2.5. So yeah, not a favorite. Pretty forgettable. I already couldn't tell you what the twist was and what happened at the end. It is a different day. When I went through and was editing the footage, a bunch of it at the end was unusable. It was glitchy and I don't know what exactly happened, but we're just gonna redo it so that I can post this and get it up for you guys. So that's the bad news, but the good news is we only have 2 books to redo. So this book I gave 2 stars, and it's The Memory Keeper's Daughter by Kim Edwards, and this is a historical fiction, and I buddy read this with my friend Elizabeth, and it was not a winner, unfortunately. So this is about a man in the, I believe it's in the 30s? 60s, I was off. 60s, a man in the 60s and his wife, and she gives birth to twins, and he births them because he's a doctor, and when the wife is resting, he realizes that one of the twins has Down syndrome, and so he tells his nurse to take her to an institution. The nurse is not able to leave the baby in an institution, and she ends up running away with the baby and raising the child as her own. And so basically, you're just following these people through their lives as they're living with the results of this decision that this father made, because he knows that the nurse doesn't take the baby and he sends her money and everything. But overall, I felt like I wanted more. I felt like the characters were annoying. I wanted more from the children as they were growing up, and I didn't really get a whole lot of that. And I don't know, I felt like there was a lot missing from this that could have really brought more into the story. So it didn't do what I wanted it to. It didn't go the place I wanted it to. It was just kind of boring. I kind of didn't care by the end. I was kind of ready for it to be over. And then this last book I almost didn't include because it is a very niche book, but I do feel like the things that I disliked about this book are important for people to know so they don't make the same mistakes as me. And that is #Church2, How Purity Culture Upholds Abuse and How to Find Healing by Emily Joy Allison. So this book felt like a slam piece for every male that had ever wronged her. I thought that it was going to be a discussion on purity culture and religious abuse, and I thought it was going to discuss different forms of abuse that happen in churches that maybe people aren't aware of, and maybe give some practical application for how to combat this in our culture. I felt like this was not a book to help somebody heal from their trauma. I felt like this was a vent session. Also because I already knew a lot of it. I grew up in a very abusive church situation, so it honestly just felt like everything she was saying, I was like, yeah, this stuff happens. So I didn't learn anything from it. And then it became very info dumpy. And then at the end, she basically said something along the lines of, she basically equated her experience as a female at a church to being racially profiled. And I'm not okay with that. And it just felt very, woe is me. Here's all of the things that are wrong, but no inkling of how to fix them, how to work on it, what to do if you're put in that situation. Yeah, this was just huge no, hard pass. Okay, those are all of the books that I read in November, some of which you heard about the other day and some right now with me, but for you it's the same, so whatever. Leave me a comment down below and let me know what some of your favorite books are that you read this month. Please hit that subscribe button, it really helps out my channel, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!